Welcome back to another episode of the Unitrans podcast. Today, we want to discuss the common belief that more technology automatically leads to better outcomes. Joining me in the conversation today is Executive of Digital and IT, Nicolay May, and HR Executive, Liesl Dentlinger. Welcome, Nicolay and Liesl. We look forward to having a conversation around the idea that while data drives visibility, people drive value, especially in complex African operating environments. So please tell us a little bit about your roles, and we'd like to hear more about what you do here.
Thank you very much, and looking forward to this podcast with you. I'm looking after the digital and IT function of Unitrans. That encompasses all the hard stuff from infrastructure to the very cool solution designs that we bring into the business. So incorporating quite a lot of aspects in bringing value to the business.
Amazing.
I head up the human capital function as well as marketing and internal communications. And in essence, that means that I'm accountable for creating the environment within which people can thrive, maybe from a HR process point of view, but also to appropriately market our organization externally and internally, and ensure all our employees are engaged.
Wonderful. And I'm sure you guys both have very illustrious careers within Unitrans, as we can see. So tell us, every logistic business today talks about data, dashboards, and automation, yet disruptions still exist. But where does data help the most, and where does it still need people and processes to deliver value in the African supply chains?
The value of data is definitely where we need consistency, and we're looking at operating efficiently. The human in the loop, however, brings value. I think because we are the consumer in our space, and we human wants language, we want to understand value, we want to create meaning, and that's the human in the loop plays a particular role. We also found that from just the dashboard, a critical dashboard with data doesn't create difference in behavior, and that's where the human aspect comes in creating value from data.
Very interesting. Liesl, any thoughts?
So we really need data as a means of accelerating getting to a solution. But the judgment that goes with deciding on the solution is still a human skill. So it's still the thought processes, the decisiveness, the ability to handle uncertainty and ambiguity is still a human skill. You're not going to be able to outsource that to technology or to any form of AI. And so we are very reliant on what the human in the loop knows and understands about our customer, knows and understands about our context, makes decisive decisions and predictive decisions into the future, which we will not be able to get from technology.
Interesting. And actually on that note, when conditions now change suddenly in your business, you look at the weather, infrastructure, disruption, border delays, things such as those, where does human judgment add the most value alongside the algorithms and the systems?
I think a practical example that we're currently facing is the cyclone that's hitting Mozambique and our Malawian sites. And data provided us insights into when this will land, the potential impact, the risks. But we had to get to the stage where the cyclone actually starts affecting for us to make a judgment on when to get our people out, when to make sure the safety of our humans in the loop is in play. And so the judgment there again, so all the information at hand very much prepared us for the decision. The decision was made by the contract manager, general managers on site, caring for their people.
Very interesting.
I think what's also very critical is AI and technology is not going to create the culture. It's not going to make the ethical decisions. It's not going to lead people. It's not going to inspire and motivate individuals. It's not going to make you give discretionary effort in times of crisis or uncertainty. So I think the core requirements around emotional insight, empathy, the skills that really make us human is what will differentiate at times of contextual change, societal change, things that haven't yet been predicted, things that we can't draw algorithms for yet. Hopefully there aren't too many of those, but we don't know. The uncertainty is the only thing we are certain about is that there's going to be uncertainty. And I think it's in that context that the human skill behind it, that that fundamentally defines us as caring individuals, making judgments, discerning what's right from wrong, what's ethical and what's unethical, what will be tolerated, what won't be tolerated, what's right for our customer versus what's right for us. I think that becomes even more heightened during those times of uncertainty.
I want to pick up on the customer, because that's the ultimate reason why we have a business, and the relationship creation with the customer. And with that in mind, the data enables us to negotiate better, to come to better value propositions with the customer. But the relationship is a human-to-human handshake. It's a look me in the eye, let's do this together agreement. And the stakeholder responsibility is high in our business. We've also got a big portion of our workforce, our frontline workers, who are actually on the ground driving our business, and our responsibility towards them for safety and for us taking care of them, supporting the business, a big part of our focus. And data enables us to look after their safety. Lots of discussions will be held in this podcast also on how we take care from technology and data, looking after their safety, but it's ultimately to take care of them.
I love the fact that the human element has not been lost in translation within your business. If you look at an example, can you share an example where human judgment actually perhaps maybe corrected, challenged, or even elevated what the data was suggesting?
I'm going to come back to the safety aspects on our control towers. We've got huge amount of telematics coming into the safeguarding of our drivers. We still have decisions to be made on safety of roads. So we take the data, a human needs to evaluate that. Are we still going to drive on that road? Risk assessment says not a good idea. Can we still do it, delivering to a time schedule, to a cost schedule, on that route? Very important is where the human decision in the cab of our vehicles come, especially where it relates to pedestrians on our roads, and that we cannot yet take away from technology on that discretion the driver in the seat has.
And while we try and make as many forthcoming decisions or predictive decisions with regard to data, be it what skills are necessary in the future, how should we be structuring reward packages, and there's many formulas and kind of predictive indexes that can show us that. What it doesn't tell us, what AI or technology can't tell us, is what the human lived experience is. And so every individual arrives at work every day. We have absolutely no idea how they are going to feel or why they feel that way. But the lived experience we have of them as an employee, the experience they have of us as leaders or managers in the organization, fundamentally shapes the decisions that they're going to make. So that ability of predictability is not going to exist via any data source. So maybe in the movies, where you do a retina scan and you can kind of work out, the person arrives at work today and by tomorrow they're going to feel a specific way. We don't have that at all in our predictive ability in terms of employees. So that lived human experience is still so valuable in terms of how we decide on various elements associated with people.
That's great to hear. At the same time, I can imagine you also need to trust the data. And how do organizations build that trust in the data without creating false certainty, and at the same time ensuring that the teams know when to act, when to escalate, or even when to pause at times?
There's some great skills that we need to grow, that we have in the organization, but need to grow further. Data literacy is part of that, but also understanding where data lineage comes from, creating yet again that human value of trust in the data. So where is it coming from? Can we spot the trends as an evaluation of the data? And then data governance. Who is giving us this data? And can we validate that? There's lots and lots of skills development around making sure data gets trusted that supports the decision making.
My career has showed me that any set of data you bring to the table about people, someone's going to find something about it. And it's really about that lived experience. I used to joke about, in God we'll trust, but all others must bring data to the table, except when it comes to human capital. Because I would be able to tell you that on the trajectory of where we're going now, our turnover of staff would be X, Y, and Z, but I actually don't know who's going to resign. I don't know if someone actually has written the resignation letter and it's going to actually land up on a manager's desk at the end of the day or the month. So we have to be really, really cautious around predictive data index or what has worked for others when we manage and engage with our employees, because the very thing we want to predict is unpredictable. And that's the behavior of our individuals.
So what skills would you say and mindsets matter most now when it comes to building a data literate supply chain team?
The first word that pops up for me is curiosity. So be curious about the data, be curious about the answer, the problem that we want to solve for, and the ability then to look at the trends. We are codifying. So we want to use data to solve problems. We need to learn the skill of how to codify that into logarithms to be able to do that. And then coming back to the creating meaning of and trusting that. That's something we must not lose. The over and above the curiosity, being critical about the data.
Very interesting curiosity. I wouldn't have thought that would be one of the skills that are needed, but very interesting point there.
Mine's not to forget the human intelligence is more important than the artificial intelligence. And so while AI might tell us how to do something, it's a manager or an employee or a customer advisor or that tells us why it's important. Why does it matter for our customer? Why is this something that we prioritize over something else? Why we would choose to put our effort, both our capital and our human effort, into doing something at a specific point in time. So I think the core skill we always need to heighten is by having solutions found easier through technology, to utilize that time to really expand our own intelligence, that machines can't tell us. And I don't think we know what that is yet. I think we're just so amazed at the moment with what machines can do. So we're like watching a little puppy dog playing new tricks, when actually we should go out and think about, okay, now that these tricks can be played, what am I supposed to be doing with this? Like, how do I take the capacity that machines don't have, my human intelligence, and expand that beyond what even I thought was possible? Because we all know that we don't fully utilize this great muscle that we have in our skull to its full extent. Imagine if we did, what solutions we'd be able to solve for our customers, what solutions we'll be able to solve for society. So I think the biggest skill we probably still need to develop is our own human intelligence.
I love that. I do love that a lot. And I love the fact that you speak about technology and how we can implement it correctly at the same time. So at the same time, we know that many organizations do then go and invest a lot of time and effort and resources in technology, but they don't always change the day-to-day operations. So how do leaders distinguish meaningful innovation from more vanity implementations to change without adoption at the end of the day?
The focus should definitely need to be on what is core and what matters most. We've got a good saying: if it makes money, if it saves money, if it transforms. Those are the key elements. And so keep it practical. In a D&IT way, we like to go at things in an agile way. So try in a small area, make it practical, and create behavioral changes around that before scale. What's important for us as well in the rollout of technology and data is how do we get to the frontline workers. And we also, unfortunately, in our African environment, have areas where we've got low technology. And yet again, there the human meaning comes in, especially where we cannot rely on the technology. So it's considering all those aspects in rolling it out with the human.
And I think the only thing you're allowed to be vain about is how does it bring value to the customer? We don't exist here. We're not a tech business. We're a solutions organization to try and create solutions for our customer and to add value to our customer. It may just happen that those solutions involve really advanced technology, but it's I don't think there's any place for vanity projects associated with, things we like in tech. There's many things Nicola and I would like to do. We don't get to do it in this position. It's about driving value for the customer and maximizing the utilization of technology in achieving that outcome.
Again, I love the thoughts behind what you're saying at the same time. But now if we look at the future, AI is the big buzzword at the moment. And in the technology space, everyone is speaking about AI. But now as AI now becomes more progressive and it becomes more embedded in planning and decision and support, how do you see this partnership working between humans and machines?
I think when they named AI artificial intelligence, they made a critical mistake there, because it's about augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence, because it doesn't create out of its own accord, or not yet. It needs to be fed. And it's important for us on continuously feeding back to that pool of understanding in order for it to grow. So just a thought on the augmentation of intelligence, and linking that to what Leal say is our responsibility to augment our own intelligence and not be dependent on that. AI is, in the beginning we spoke about data giving visibility and then people giving value. AI is that little ham in the sandwich that creates speed. And that's where we're all positioned and in this discussion.
I love that.
And it creates capacity for you to do something else. So as I said earlier, it's, that speed that gets created with AI results in you having capacity to do something that only the human can do. So either engaging with the client, understanding better what the customer's need is, levels of empathy that can be improved. Those are things that's really going to differentiate the human race or mankind, womankind, people kind, from what is augmented intelligence. I think also at the moment we're riding the wave and we're like so amazed at what can happen. But as Nicola says, it doesn't create data out of nothing. We actually feed it. And it's going to get to a point potentially where we're not feeding it any more information. It's taking everything that's available there right now. But until there is a new dearth of information, and we have to create that through our lived experience, through our engagement with clients, if we don't have that additional pool of information, it's going to kind of stagnate. It's not, once again, we're not in the movies where, it's just going to be able to kind of, hopefully not, think for itself and, make these decisions. Like, until we have done the work with our customer, if we haven't sold new contracts and we haven't been able to get the data from, where our drivers are driving and, where our loads are going, how do we feed that into a system for it to tell us something that we don't already know? If we don't really fully own up and live in the space of being able to differentiate ourselves from technology, then we stand the risk of becoming obsolete. Where actually what we want to be doing is fully utilize the value that comes with technology, but that requires that we generate new intelligence.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I love the fact that despite all the technology that we have, all the AI, people remain at the core of everything. And I love the fact that Unitrans lives by that at the end of the day. So thank you so much for your insights. We really appreciate it. Through this episode, we've learned that technology enables progress, but people transform outcomes. Thank you, Nicola and Diesel. We really appreciate your balanced and industry-led insights. You've helped us to see that resilient supply chains come from better decision-making, not just better systems. In our next episode, we will continue exploring how people, leadership, and innovation intersect to drive growth across the continent.